Here to break it all down, this memo of the FBI director, literally written on May the 2nd, and Hillary wasn't even interviewed till the 4th of July weekend. We have the president, the chief counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice, Jay Sekulow, also counsel to the president. What's going on, sir? How are you?
Well, Sean, I'm doing okay, but I think the state of the republic I'm concerned about with this situation within the FBI. I mean, this is very serious. Now we've got these edits, and as we did an analysis of those edits today, I mean, it's kind of breathtaking in scope from what James Comey wrote to what Peter Strzok and maybe Andrew McCabe or whoever else was working on this allowed to go forward. I mean, you can go line by line, and it is pretty outrageous. You mentioned the gross negligence, which is the key words, by the way, for 18 U.S.C. 793F, and that is the disposition of basically classified information. This would have gone to the server issue. And there, as originally drafted, he said there is evidence to support the conclusion that Secretary Clinton and others used the private email server in a manner that was grossly negligent with respect to the handling of classified information. And the statute itself, phrase is, through gross negligence, permits the same to be removed from its proper place of custody. So he writes that, that's what Comey writes. It's changed in the edit process to extremely careless. Now, by the way, technically extremely careless means gross negligence, but they were specific in taking that language out. So that's point number one here. And that is the starting point to show you that this declination, which was, I mean, this was, you and I both lived in Atlanta, and I'm a member of the Georgia Bar, and went to law school in Georgia, and of course, I practice primarily in Washington D.C. these days, but I'm still an active member of the Georgia Bar. When you tried a case in South Georgia, they called it home cooking. I mean, was this case involved home cooking? In other words, was it already done? And the answer to that is unequivocally, especially when you see this memo, there's no question.
But there's one other way to say that. So another way to say that is the fix was in.
Fix was in, and the home cooking was done. That's exactly right. So that's, by the way, the point is just point one.
Isn't that illegal?
Well, look, there's multiple parts of this that are illegal, and that is, first we got the ethical portion, where there's ethical issues, and then the legality issues of what was going on here. I don't know how in the world James Comey could have become, he became FBI director and attorney general, and they just let that go. I don't understand how, for instance, in the original draft of the document, it says the sheer volume of information that was properly classified as secret at the time that it was discussed on email supports an inference that the participants were grossly negligent in their handling of the information. Sheer volume of information changed to, in addition to this highly sensitive information, we also found information that was properly classified as secret by the U.S. intelligence community at the time it was discussed on email. Now, first of all, even that one's an admission of liability, but to go from the sheer volume of information to just a statement about highly sensitive information is rather drastic in its scope. Then you have this one. This is especially concerning because all of these emails, and Sean, this goes to the heart of what you and I were talking about for a year. This is especially concerning because all of these emails were housed on servers not supported by full-time security staffs like those found at the departments and agencies of the U.S. government. That was the server in the Colorado townhouse restroom, and then you had the one that was in their basement. So James Comey's report is, as he drafted it, this is especially concerning because they were not housed in secure servers. It is completely removed.
Let me ask,
taken out.
A top Republican senator now, we now know, Ron Johnson is raising a pretty profound question about the FBI's role and possible interference in the 2016 election. And his letter reveals specific edits that are made in this particular case, because there's more, the original draft had likely that foreign actors and sources. We've since confirmed that 5 foreign intelligence agencies did have access to that email server in a mom and pop shop bathroom closet. They did have it there. Changing gross negligence to extreme carelessness, that's a big deal. And other changes were made as well in this particular thing. Removing the intel community in that particular statute. Look, here's what we know. We know that Hillary Clinton did have classified, top secret, special access program information on the unsecure server. We do know that she deleted 33,000 emails that had been subpoenaed. We do know that she used acid wash, bleach bit, to remove the evidence or any chance that the FBI forensically could recover it. We do know that devices that had the same information would smash with hammers. Now, Jay, look, you don't have to be a lawyer like yourself that has argued multiple times, 20 some odd times before the United States Supreme Court to figure out that this is an obstruction case, mishandling of classified information, destruction of classified information, and that's just the beginning.
How about the destruction of evidence?
That's called obstruction of justice, yeah.
Under the authority of the Department of Justice and the FBI. How about the fact that this document was written May 5th, and there had been 16 witnesses scheduled that had not been interviewed with, many of which were given immunity. And as a colleague of mine said, who's a former U.S. attorney, who gives immunity and then doesn't interview that witness before they make their conclusion?
Well, what should happen to James Comey and Peter Strzok? Strzok, of course, the pro-Hillary, anti-Trump guy who's involved seemingly in every case we discuss. But he's the one that changed the language in this, edited this, and was part of the exoneration in early May before Hillary was even interviewed in July.
Here's the situation. I mean, they're distinct in one sense, but they're connected in another. Distinct in that Comey was the director of the FBI. He could have said, you know what, I'm not going with these changes. But he didn't. Okay, that's number one. Number two, Peter Strzok. He was think about who he has interviewed. He has interviewed Hillary Clinton at the end of this, and Huma Abedin and Cheryl Mills. He was the lead investigator on that case while all the nonsense was going on with him and Lisa Page. Then he was put on Bob Mueller's team, and after about 2.5 months taken off that team because of the emails and text messages. And people have told me, I heard Jerry Nadler, a congressman from New York, who I know, and Jerry's out there saying, hey, everybody has entitled to the First Amendment free speech rights. That is true. What is not true is you cannot be the investigator of the case when you have expressed this kind of information, because now you're not just a person. It's like a lawyer.
What is your how did you interpret
clients I don't agree with? That's what lawyers do. But this is different. You're the investigator here, so it's not unbiased and it's not equal justice under the law. So Peter Strzok's whole and look, his reach into all of this is unbelievable. Except he's still an employee of the department or the FBI. And ask this question. Andrew, they had this conversation. One of the emails talks about between him and Lisa Page about our conversation in Andy's office. I'm assuming, and it's an assumption, that this is Andrew McCabe.
This is the insurance policy. No, they refer to it and classify it as an insurance policy.
Yes.
And then they talk specifically, Lisa Page, another Mueller employee, another FBI employee, is telling Peter Strzok that, he's the guardian of our democratic republic. It sounds to me like their plan B, their insurance policy, in all likelihood, was in Andrew McCabe's office. And it sounds to me, because if you look at the timing, it's awfully coincidental that that's the beginning of the, quote, Russia probe.
Well, I think all of those questions you ask are, and you're right. Here's the thing that, and this is what Senator Johnson wants to get to, and I do too. What is the time frame of all of this? In other words, where were they in the investigation as these changes were being made? Of course, you ask yourself, why were they writing exoneration letters 3 months before they interviewed any of the principals? But you can't put any of this stuff aside. Here's the problem with all of this, Sean. You look at this situation and you say to yourself, how could this possibly be happening? In the United States of America, this stuff is going on. And then you got a complicit media in all this. We talked about that earlier in the week with this NBC nonsense that I dealt with earlier in the week, which seems like a lifetime ago now. But the fact is, you look at all of this and say to yourself, how in the world is this good for the constitutional republic we live in? The answer is it's not. So I think that what Chris Wray has to do, and that's why by the way, I know they have got an inspector general. I get it. But this is beyond an inspector general, in my view. They say Jeff Sessions is looking at whether there needs to be a special counsel here. You put the Peter Strzok situation with the Fusion GPS, Bruce Orr's wife. Now we know the wife was hired to work on the dossier. That Orr's and her husband, who's a DOJ number 4 in DOJ, is meeting with Christopher Steele and Glenn Simpson. And you put all this together and you say to yourself, this is not justice. This is not the way a credible investigation is supposed to go forward. This is not the way it works in the United States of America. This stuff has got to be fixed because this is not good for us. When I say us, I'm talking about the American people.
Called the Constitution, Jay. I know we're not even talking about surveillance, unmasking, leaking intelligence. We're not even talking about
unmasking. Was the Fusion GPS fake dossier used as a basis upon which they obtained a FISA warrant?
Great question, Jay.
General Flynn pleads guilty. General Flynn pleads guilty, and then the judge that's sentencing is the judge that took the plea, then recuses himself before sentencing.
What's that?
Happens to be a FISA judge. I have no idea. I'm not speaking to will the judge. Maybe I'm sure the judge thought he had to recuse himself, but everybody would sure look to know. You don't have the right to know this, but it would be nice to know why, because there's a lot of stuff.
Well, I'd like to know if that phony, Hillary Clinton bought and paid for dossier was the reason that the FISA warrant was granted. All right, quick break. We'll come back. Jay Sekulow is with us. More of the Sean Hannity Show straight ahead. All right, as we continue, Jay Sekulow is with us, counsel to the president and the chief counsel for the American Center for Law and Justice. I'd like to know why, if we're supposed to be investigating Russian collusion, why we don't view the Hillary bought and paid for phony dossier as collusion of some kind, because Russian propaganda was paid for, lies were paid for to influence the American people. By the way, did you see John Solomon's piece today?
I did.
I mean, 3 days before the election, you have people being offered $750,000 to accuse Trump.
Is any of this shocking to you?
No.
Okay, right. So here.
No, what's shocking to me is it's so deep and it's so profound, and that our Constitution is literally being shredded before our eyes, and the rule of law and equal justice under the law may be non-existent if they get away with this. That's what's shocking.
But Sean, I want to go to something you just said about a minute and a half ago. People need to understand. If that dossier was the basis of a FISA warrant that resulted in the unmasking of Americans, and we know that the first time they went in for the FISA warrant, they didn't get it, which is like unheard of, right? Then they get it, and if it's based on that Christopher Steele dossier, you're talking about a whole host of constitutional issues? You got a whole host of them right there. Serious stuff.
All right, Jay Sekulow, American Center for Law and Justice, will join us on TV tonight as well.